Nothing is working. YouTube didn't start. YouTube has now started. Periscope is up. I don't know if Twitch is. My mic did not start. I literally set everything up. I have a checklist. I went down. I set everything up with the checklist. I said start. Here we are. Not alone though. Hal Sparks killed his broadcast yesterday. Gave himself 4 flat tires, as he would say. I still have the spoon and tongs, or the spatongs from yesterday if you were watching. So if anybody wants that, let me know and I'll mail them to you. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, or Merry Christmas if you're in Australia. I am your host, your Heavenly Father. If you want to support the broadcast of the LieStream, you may do so. You can PayPal me, you can Venmo me, you can use a super chat. You can go to kevinlyfather.com and become a patron, which entitles you to so much more. You get to watch movies with us. On Fridays, we do that. We also, let's see, I don't see who's in here. Good morning, Tracy. Morning, Chuck. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Sean. Hi, at Random. Hi, Marcy. Everybody else who's in the chat room. Everybody else who's watching but doesn't chat. We love you all. So there's a press conference that started like an hour ago, and it's still going on, and it's so weird to have people answering questions and doing things, and I'm just thrown off by the whole thing. Let's pull that up here. This is a press conference about racism and stuff. Racial equality. It's coming up in a second here. Just let me make sure that it will go to you. It will. Okay, so my computer... Quiet. My computer stayed happy. The software itself decided it was going to poop. So let's go back to the beginning of the press conference. And let's learn stuff about racial equality. This is just weird. I'm not used to this. I haven't watched this press conference, but I'm guessing that nobody attacks anybody during the conference. I don't know that for sure, but let's find out. And the fact that it might still be happening. Let's go live and see. Let's go live and see if it's the press conference is actually... Okay, the press conference is over now. So we know that it's less than 12 hours. Let's listen.
Other day,
to
Susan
increase transparency
Rice
and introduce
is
all
with
of
her,
you to the
and
policy experts who are leading the president's initiatives. We're
here's
joined
Jen
today
Psaki.
by domestic policy advisor Susan Rice, who will be talking about the racial equity executive order that the president will be signing this afternoon. She's kindly offered to stick around and take some questions. I will, as usual, play the role of bad cop when it's time for her to go. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Communists. This is the Susan Rice, by the way.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back. Jen, thanks. The president has committed the whole of our government to advancing racial justice and equity for all Americans. I'm leading this effort out of the Domestic Policy Council. I've assembled a first...
How's the volume, guys? Can you guys hear her okay?
...rate team to drive this agenda forward. We'll hold the federal government accountable for advancing equity for families across America. I have the support of every White House office and every agency in this work because, as President Biden has made clear, advancing equity is everybody's job. Tackling these challenges, though, is personal for me. I'm the descendant of immigrants from Jamaica and enslaved Americans. My grandparents and my parents are beneficiaries of the American dream, and so am I. My family's story is a remarkable one of the march towards greater equality.
I'm sure she meant to say beneficiaries. I'm sure her family were fishermen in Jamaica, and they are beneficiaries.
And opportunity. But for too many American families, systemic racism and inequality in our economy, laws and institutions still put the American dream far out of reach. Today, the average black family has just 1/10 the wealth of the average white family, while the gap between white and black in home ownership is now larger than it was in 1960. These long-standing inequities are compounded by the converging crises we face as a nation. Americans of color are being infected by and dying from COVID-19 at higher rates. 1 in 10 Black Americans and 1 in 11 Latino workers are currently unemployed. By some estimates, 40% of Black-owned businesses have been forced to close for good during the COVID crisis. Black and Latino families with children are twice as likely to be experiencing food insecurity during the pandemic as white families. And Black and Latino Americans are 2.8 times more likely to die of COVID-19. And for Native communities across the country, the overlapping economic and health crises have devastated tribal economies and healthcare systems. These are desperate times for so many Americans, and all Americans need urgent federal action to meet this moment. Today, President Biden will deliver a national address on his plans to advance racial justice and equity, starting with an equitable and inclusive recovery. President Biden will renew the federal government's commitment to making the American dream real for families across the nation by taking ambitious steps to redress inequality in our economy and expand opportunity for communities that have been left behind, including communities of color. His economic plans make historic investments in underserved communities and put equity at the heart of our recovery. His ambitious agenda builds on a legacy of Americans forging opportunity out of crisis. These aren't feel-good policies. The evidence is clear. Investing in equity is good for economic growth, and it creates jobs for all Americans. Economists have estimated that the U.S. economy has lost a staggering $16 trillion over the last 20 years because of discrimination against families of color. If we closed racial gaps in income and opportunity, these same economists have estimated we could add $5 trillion to the U.S. economy over the next 5 years and add over 6 million new jobs for all Americans. So building a more equitable economy is essential if Americans are going to compete and thrive in the 21st century. We've hit the ground running to embed equity throughout the administration. On day one, the president signed an executive order directing an unprecedented whole-of-government initiative to embed racial equity across federal policies, programs, and institutions. That starts with a review of policies and institutions to redress systemic racism where it exists and to advance equity where we aren't doing enough. Every agency will place equity at the core of their public engagement, their policy design and program delivery, to ensure that government resources are reaching Americans of color and all marginalized communities, rural, urban, disabled, LGBTQ+, religious minorities, and so many others. The president has put equity at the center of his response to the COVID-19 and economic crises. His executive orders signed last week deliver rent relief, student debt reprieve, and emergency food assistance to families across the country, helping all Americans, including Black and brown families who we know are being hit hardest by this crisis. And he took steps to make our broken immigration system more humane and secure. He restored the integrity of the census so that our constitutionally mandated accounting of every person in the United States is fair and inclusive. And even before taking office, President Biden released his American Rescue Plan that will make historic investments in advancing equity. Independent economists estimate that his plan will cut child poverty in half. Cut child poverty in half for all Americans and reduce overall poverty by 30%.
Well, we'll see if it works.
Black American families this year will face a poverty rate of 20% if Congress does not act on the American Rescue Plan. But if enacted, the poverty rate would fall by over 1/3, and it'd fall by 40% for Latino families and by 1/5 for Asian American and Pacific Islander families. The American Rescue Plan also provides critical relief to Native American communities and tribes. These investments will lift over 8 million Black, Latino, and Asian Americans out of poverty and provide relief across sectors where families of color are most disproportionately impacted by this crisis, in food and financial security, healthcare access, and education and childcare. Today, President Biden is continuing his commitment to embedding equity at the center of his agenda by signing an additional package of executive actions. The President will sign a memorandum directing the Department of Housing and Urban Development to mitigate racial bias in housing and affirmatively advance our nation's fair housing laws. He will also sign an executive order directing the Department of Justice not to renew any contracts with private prisons. Private prisons profiteer off of federal prisoners and are proven to be, or found to be by the Department of Justice Inspector General, to be less safe for correctional officers and for prisoners. President Biden is committed to reducing mass incarceration while making our communities safer. That starts with ending the federal government's reliance on private prisons. The President will also sign an executive order reinvigorating the commitment of all federal agencies to engage in regular, robust, and meaningful consultation with tribal governments. And the President will sign a memorandum directing all federal agencies to take steps to combat xenophobia and acts of violence against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders who have been targeted by political leaders in our nation's response to COVID-19. Again, these are continuation of our initial steps to advance racial justice.
She sounds a little bit like Obama, and even her gestures are very Obama-like. It's interesting. I wonder if she wants to run for office in the future.
And equity through early executive action. Beyond this, the President is committed to working with Congress to advance equity in our economy, our criminal justice systems, our healthcare systems, and in our schools. As I've said many times in my personal capacity, and I'll say again, I believe we all rise or fall together. Advancing equity is a critical part of healing and of restoring unity in our nation. The President will have more to say about all of this later this afternoon, and I'm happy to take a few of your questions.
Peter?
Ambassador Rice, thank you. You speak about communities of color right now that are disproportionately impacted by the
That's Peter Alexander, NBC News.
pandemic, of course. They're also less inclined to have
Oh, it tells you right on the screen. My work here is done. Good night, everybody. Drive safely.
faith in the federal government response to the vaccination process. So what specifically, I'll follow up with others, but what specifically is being done right now for communities of color to convince them it's okay to get this vaccine?
Well, Peter, I will leave much of this to my colleague Jeff Zients, who's leading our COVID response, but I think two important points. One, we have established within our COVID task force an effort on equity, and that includes obviously racial equity, that will focus on health disparities, but also on the reality that there are Americans who, and particularly Americans of color, who, for very valid historical reasons, are skeptical and reluctant. And a large part of what our colleagues on the COVID task force are doing, this is the second part, is reaching out directly through targeted campaigns to get to those very communities where the skepticism is highest. And that's vitally important because as communities of color are suffering disproportionately, may have less access to information about the vaccine and the ability to easily go online in some instances and get an appointment, we have to take those additional steps to ensure that they are aware of its availability, they can get appointments, and that they understand that the vaccine is safe.
Let me ask you, I have a couple things. One's news of the day, but another one, there's a lot of day one promises right now.
Jen does news of the day.
Okay, fine. Let me ask you,
We'll do the whole thing after that.
Smart. So Susan, just saying like that's somebody else's job. I don't want to get in the way. That's Jen. Susan Rice is going to be our president one day. I'm marking it now.
February.
Unless she doesn't want to be, or she isn't elected. One of those three options, I'm calling it right now, today. Mark it down.
20th of last year, President Biden said, my first day of office, I'm going to send a bill to the Congress repealing the liability protection for gun manufacturers, closing the background check loopholes, and waiting period. So what happened to that day one promise?
Good question.
Well, I think you've seen that we have rolled out an unprecedented number of early executive actions. And as you've heard Jen say and many of my colleagues say, this is just the beginning. We have 1,454 more days left
That is a Biden promise broken. He did say that.
in President Biden's first term. And so give us a little something to do over the next few days.
Cecilia? Thanks, Jen. Thank you, Ambassador. A housekeeping question, if I may, and then a follow-up. Can you speak specifically to what this does as it relates to immigration and immigrants? Does this cover particularly the prisons and private prisons housing immigrants, undocumented immigrants, tens of thousands of whom are facing deportation in privately run prisons right now?
This order today applies to the Department of Justice run prisons. It is not, in this instance, applicable to those run by other agencies.
So not ICE, not anything like that. Okay, and then going back to January 6th and what we saw just a few weeks ago at the Capitol, when we saw people roaming that building carrying Confederate flags, wearing anti-Semitic shirts. We saw lawmakers in that group. We saw firefighters in that group. We saw military veterans in that group. What are you doing to address this issue of white nationalism? And how concerned are you about the threat of from some of these groups leading into this impeachment trial in 2 weeks?
Well, I think we have seen, and it's been plain for all Americans on their television sets, just how serious a problem we face from nationalists and white supremacists who have demonstrated willingness to resort to violence in some instances. And that is why the president has ordered the intelligence community to compile a comprehensive assessment of the nature of this threat and challenge and its origins and roots, and thus provide policymakers with inputs that will be very important to address this challenge. The National Security Council has set up a capacity within the NSC to focus on domestic violent extremism and to ensure that we are within the White House and within the interagency coordinating efforts to craft and implement policies that will address this. So we're taking it quite seriously.
And why doesn't this address the ICE private detentions?
It addresses the Department of Justice prisons in the first instance.
Sarah.
It's not.
Hey,
It's
okay.
silent on what
Hey,
may or may
Phyllis.
not transpire with these. There was a Department of Justice Inspector General report in 2016 that underscored that private prisons funded by DOJ were less safe, less secure, and arguably less humane. This was the Obama-Biden administration took steps to end renewing of contracts for private prisons. Trump administration reversed that, and we're reestablishing it.
Go ahead. And I know we met this morning, but tell us your name again.
Mario Parker, Bloomberg News. Thank you, Ambassador Rice. Two questions. The first, what will the administration do to address the relationship between communities of color and police, particularly as part of the mass incarceration component? And then second question, Republican legislatures have signaled that they're going to look to roll back some of the voting procedures from the last election. We know that that's centered in some of those swing states and largely black and brown communities.
Okay, Susan, now's the time that you tell him you can't understand him and make him take his mask off. That's the move here. Let's see what she does.
What's the administration going to do about that as well?
Well, with respect to prisons, policing,
No. Don't answer his question. That's a difficult question. You do not answer difficult questions. You attack. Tell him you can't, and then he'll be like, well, I don't want to take, well, then we'll move it on. And then he'll say again, and then the next person might say, well, actually, we'd like to hear what Bloomberg has to say. No. You take charge, young lady.
the
They
entire
have no idea how to press her.
basket of very important criminal justice reform issues. This is something that we are committed to addressing, and we will have more to say on.
It's almost like they're, how do I say this? Decent people. Almost like that. But they're faking us out. You'll see.
criminal justice in the coming weeks, including on matters related to policing. So please stay tuned for that. With respect to efforts to roll back the access to the ballot, this is something that I expect that the president will address in his remarks today. It's a matter of real concern because we ought to be in the business of encouraging and enabling all Americans who are eligible to vote to be able to vote. And that's why we will continue to work with Congress on its various efforts to advance.
Is OAN even there? Are they standing
democratic
in the back
reforms.
anymore?
There's legislation on the Hill that would move us in that direction, including restoring and revitalizing the Voting Rights Act.
Jonathan, you'll have to be the last one, but Susan will come back, I'm sure.
You gonna let me come
Ambassador
back?
Rice, we'll welcome you back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ambassador. These measures here, executive actions, which of course could be overturned and reversed by a future president. Can you talk about what steps could be taken to codify these, to make them permanent, whether it's private prisons or other measures, so they could not be undone by a future president?
Yeah, well, Jonathan, as you know, to codify something and make it lasting in law requires that Congress, both houses of Congress pass it and that the president sign it. And for this, as well as many other things, there will be areas where legislative actions are the best and most durable approach. There'll be some instances where, in advance of legislation or efforts to achieve legislation, it's wise to take executive action. So I don't think we should assume that by doing something by executive action, and where it may also be appropriate to seek legislation, that we wouldn't do it. We have a very full legislative agenda. The president's first priority is enacting the American Rescue Plan, as well as getting our nominees confirmed, and we'll be focused in the next few weeks on that.
Thank you, Ambassador Rice.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody.
That's it? Like 20 questions and then you leave? Ha! Come on, we said we wanted transparency. How to tell it's a good press conference. If you're bored at some point, the government is doing its job. Uh-oh.
Okay, just a couple more things.
Hold on.
Just in the next few weeks on that.
Thank you, Ambassador Rice.
Nice recovery here.
Thank
Watch
you,
what
Jen.
happens when
Thank
she
you,
gets
everybody.
off. Watch her step off the stage. And whoop, catch us on the little ledge
Okay,
there. Boom.
just a couple
keeps
more
running
things
right
at the
through.
top, and then
Stiff
happy to
arms
take your
that little
questions.
ledge.
The president and his team have been working around the clock over
She's just not going to get herself on Twitter today. She's not going to become a meme with that. Susan, you got to try harder. Go face first.
the past 6 days to make meaningful progress on vaccinating as many people as possible. As we've talked about in this room before, increasing the vaccine supply and building increased cooperation between the federal government and state and local leaders on the ground is key to getting.
Yeah, everyone's going nuts on right-wing media about the number of executive orders that Biden is signing. Two things. It's legal. Second thing, you can sign executive orders if you're a president. That's part of the rules. You want to blame somebody? Blame FDR. But you know what? The people kept re-electing FDR over and over again. They had to pass an amendment so that people like FDR could never be elected more than twice. Because you know what? The people loved him. But absolutely, if a president wants his executive order to remain in effect for a long time, you've got to go through the legislative process. So the House, the Senate, back to, and then the president signs. But yeah, and now if you sign an executive order and the next president just leaves it, it stays in effect. That's fine.
That done. The president will speak later today on those efforts and provide an update on his team's work to bolster the vaccine supply available so that we can in turn get more shots into Americans' arms as quickly as possible. And I'll also
Oh my God, she has my pen. You see this pen right there? I use those pens. It's just a cheapie from Amazon, but it's good. It works.
add, as many of you have
Apropos of nothing, what I'm saying is she uses my pen. We should be married.
reported, there are some.
I have a thing for redheads. and brunettes and blondes, anybody with colored hair, gray-haired women, pretty much women and men. I mean, if they're interested in my thing and a right amount of money is anyway. We're off topic right now. Let's get back to Jen.
Calls this afternoon with governors to brief them on these plans and give them an update on how we will continue to work together even more efficiently. Couple other things. Earlier today, the first female vice president swore in the first female secretary of the Treasury.
What is happening?
Dr. Janet Yellen. Today, of course, is a pretty historic day. And this afternoon, the vice president will make her first visit to a federal agency, the National Institutes of Health, where she and the second gentleman, will receive their second dose of the Moderna vaccine. The vice president will thank Director Collins, Dr. Fauci, and the staff of the NIH for their work to develop the vaccine and efforts to keep America.
So I can, as California just opened back up again today, so I could go get a haircut today if I wanted to. I would not go to a place, they're 25% capacity inside. But some places, I assume, are back doing the outside cutting of the hair, which is fine. It's a beautiful day outside. I literally can't see a cloud. I don't know what the temperature is, probably 60 degrees or something. I could wear a jacket. I'll tell you guys what the temperature is here, not that you care. The question is, should I? Should I go get a haircut? Because, oh my God, I would love to get this all cut off and not deal with it anymore. I like my hair short. Okay, it's 54 degrees outside. It's going to be a high of 56. I might wait a few days on that. That's a little bit chilly. I know some of you are like minus 20 right now. Just like 56? That's shorts weather. It is. It was. Now a slight breeze picks up at 80 degrees, and I'm like, come on, man, turn the heat on. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I know we had hoped that Kevin Daughter would cut my hair. It's just, it doesn't seem to be happening. And I would like it to happen, but now Kevin Daughter has like a job. She's gone right now. She's off working her job. So what do you guys think I should risk going to get a haircut with a stranger at a time when 1 in 6 people in Southern California has COVID? I don't know.
She will also make the case that Congress needs to immediately pass the American Rescue Plan, which includes $20 billion to invest in local community vaccine distribution centers in the hardest hit areas. Her remarks on the vaccination at NIH will be live streamed on the White House YouTube channel, so you can all tune in for all of that. Okay.
And you know, as annoying as it is, it's been a year. I've made it a year. Can I put up with another couple of months of annoyance till I get the vaccine? I'm lucky enough to be, I'm 51, so I'm in that next group at some point. Plus, I've been lucky enough to have a couple of heart attacks, so that bumps me up theoretically. I'm going to start smoking, and I'm going to get a lot of weight, keep bumping up that, so I can get a haircut after I get my shots, I think, maybe. Maybe I'll hold out.
Hey,
Don't
Jonathan,
get 2 haircuts. Yes, good idea, OJ. I should get them all cut.
kick us off.
Thank you, Jen. First on the...
Sorry, I missed who that was.
Centers
Because, you know, the more important thing right now is my hair.
in the hardest hit areas. Her remarks on the vaccination at NIH will be live streamed on the White House YouTube channel, so you can all tune in for all of that. Okay, Jonathan, kick us off.
Thank you, Jen. First on the response to the pandemic, 2 matters there. First, if you give us provide us a little more detail as to how much more of the vaccine is going to be distributed and how quickly to these states. We've heard governors sound the alarm that they are desperately low on what they need. And then could you talk about, has CDC considered and would the White House support a measure for testing for all passengers on U.S. domestic flights?
Yes, please.
Well, Jonathan, on the first part of our effort is certainly to ensure we are more effectively and efficiently working with governors and local officials who have expressed some frustration in recent weeks about the lack of information and the lack of a federal plan. We've only been here 6 days, but we want to take steps as quickly as possible to address that. And part of that will be what the president updates us all on this afternoon. And I would be a very short-lived press secretary if I got ahead of the president. And we're having so much fun in here, so you don't want that to happen. On the second question on testing,
If she had said short-lived, I would have proposed right away. But she said short-lived, so I think she's married. I'm so enamored with anybody who kind of tells us the truth right now and is nice. The other day, I didn't catch this. I mean, I didn't record it, but the difference between the two, you're a terrible reporter, you're an embarrassment, you're a disgrace, compared to Jen, who the other day cleared her throat and apologized for it. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. Sorry about that. And yeah, no, I'm not. I don't find her that attractive. I'm just saying, the old Eddie Murphy joke, when you haven't eaten for 3 months and someone gives you a cracker, it is the best cracker you have ever tasted in your life. What is that, a saltine?
We're constantly evaluating, of course, our medical
She is married and she does have 3 kids.
and health experts, steps that need to be taken to keep the American people safe. We announced.
Well, that's that then. Hold on. It'll theoretically jump into the next hour. And no, that's just a theoretical. What, Biden speak? Okay, we're gonna jump right to Biden. Hold on.
Racism is allowed.
Hold on. Let's find the beginning of this. What is happening? They're just like, they're being responsive. They're coming out. They're talking. It's transparent. This is just weird, people.
And the House to get these laws through. And
he's got the tiny desk.
The filibuster, which was
tiny podium, tiny desk.
And
he's got this
here
tiny
is
side
President
table.
Joe
Here we
Biden.
go.
Well, in my campaign for president, I made it very clear that the moment it arrived as a nation where we face deep racial inequities in America and systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. What many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. It stirred the conscience and of tens of millions of Americans. And in my view, it marked a turning point in this country's attitude toward racial justice. When the six-year-old daughter, Gianna, who I met with when I met with the family, I leaned down to say hi to her, and she said, looked at me, and she said, "Daddy changed the world." That's what Gianna said, his daughter. Daddy changed the world. And I believe she was right. Not because this kind of injustice stopped, it clearly hasn't, but because the ground has shifted, because it's changed minds and mindsets, because it laid the groundwork for progress. COVID-19 has further ripped a path of destruction through every community in America, but no one has been spared. But the devastation in communities of color has been nothing short of stunning. Just look at the numbers. 40% of frontline workers, nurses, first responders.
I hate to interrupt during this, but the tiny desk is not that tiny of a desk. That's the bill signing desk that presidents have used for years. I don't know. I mean, it can't be that old, but it's easy to transport. So I think just one person could probably pick it up if they're freakishly strong, or 2 staff members can just move it from room to room. So that desk is often used as a bill signing desk. It's just when Trump sits behind it, it looked really funny, especially the way they positioned it in this wide open room with just that. There was no podium beside it or anything. It was just Trump sitting at his little tiny desk the day after Thanksgiving.
Grocery store workers are Americans of color, and many are still living on the edge. 1 in 10 Black Americans.
I actually am going to write to the White House usher, the new White House usher, to see if that is the same desk that Trump sat behind. The last White House usher would not give me any information on the White House. There is no FOIA request for the White House. The executive branch in general has FOIA requests per agency, but the White House itself can kind of do whatever it wants. I requested the information. I wanted the receipts. Remember when Trump bought McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King for the college athletes and said that he paid for it himself? Well, the White House has an entertainment budget, And whatever's not used, I believe the president's family actually ends up with that at the end of the year. It's like $100,000. But I wanted the receipts for those burgers to prove that Trump actually paid or did not pay for them, and nobody in the White House would cooperate with me.
Americans is out of work today. 1 in 11 Latino Americans is out of work today. 1 in 7 households in America, about 1 in 4 Black, 1 in 5 Latino households in America, report that they don't have enough food to eat in the United States of America. Black and Latino Americans are dying of COVID-19 at rates nearly 3 times that of white Americans. And it's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact. And the Americans now know it, especially younger Americans. One of the reasons I'm so optimistic about this nation is that today's generation of young Americans is the most progressive, thoughtful, inclusive generation that America has ever seen. And they are pulling us toward justice in so many ways, forcing us to confront the huge gap in economic inequity between those at the top and everyone else, forcing us to confront the existential crisis of climate, and yes, forcing us to confront systemic racism and white supremacy. It's just been weeks since all of America witnessed a group of thugs, insurrectionists, a political extremist and white supremacist violently attack the capital of our democracy. And so now's the time to act. It's time to act because that's what the faith and morality call us to do. Across nearly every faith, the same principles hold. We're all God's children. We should treat each other as we would like to be treated ourselves. And this is time to act, and this time to act is because it's what the core values of this nation call us to do. And I believe the vast majority of Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, share these values and want us to act as well. We have never fully lived up to the founding principles of this nation, to state the obvious, that all people are created equal and have a right to be treated equally throughout their lives. And it's time to act now, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because if we do, we'll all be better off for it. For too long, we've allowed a narrow, cramped view of the promise of this nation to fester. You know, we've bought the view that America is a zero-sum game in many cases.
Yep.
If you succeed, I fail. If you get ahead, I fall behind. If you get the job, I lose mine. Maybe worst of all, if I hold you down, I lift myself up. We've lost sight of what President Kennedy told us when he said, "A rising tide lifts all boats." And when we lift each other up, we're all lifted up. You know, and the corollary is true as well. When any one of us is held down, we're all held back. More and more economic studies in recent years have proven this. But I don't think you need economic studies to see the truth. Just imagine if instead of consigning millions of American children to under-resourced schools, we gave each and every 3-4-year-old child a chance to learn, to go to school, not daycare, school, and grow, and thrive in school and throughout. When they've done that, the places have been done, it shows they have an exponentially greater chance of going all the way through 12 years of school and doing it well.
He's making a differentiation between preschool and school. Or did he say daycare? Hold on. I'm trying to figure out what he's talking about.
But I don't think you need, not daycare, school, and grow.
Okay. He did say daycare. Yeah, preschool and daycare are two different things. So, yes, I don't know why my brain didn't function on that particular point.
Thrive in school and throughout. When they've done that, the places have been done, it shows they have an exponentially greater chance of going all the way through 12 years of school and doing it well. But, you know, does anyone in this whole nation think we're not all better off if that were to happen? Just imagine if instead of denying millions of Americans the ability to own a home and build generational wealth, we made it possible for them to buy a home, their first home, and begin to build equity to provide for their families and send their children off to school. Does anyone doubt that the whole nation would be better off? Just imagine. Instead of denying millions of young entrepreneurs the ability to access capital, we made it possible to take their dream to market, create jobs, reinvest in their own communities. Does anyone doubt this whole nation wouldn't be better off? Just imagine if more incredibly creative and innovative, how much more creative and innovative we'd be if this nation held the historic black colleges and universities to the same opportunities and minority-serving institutions that had the same funding and resources of public universities to compete for jobs in industries of the future. You know, just ask the first HBCU graduate elected as vice president if that's not true. But to do this, I believe this nation and this government need to change their whole approach to the issue of racial equity. Yes, we need criminal justice reform, but that isn't nearly enough. We need to open the promise of America to every American, and that means we need to make the issue of racial equity not just an issue for any one department of government. It has to be the business of the whole of government. That's why I issued, on one of the first days, my whole of government executive order that will, for the first time, advance equity for all throughout our federal policies and institutions. It focuses.
Just a quick note, the support for Trump online and viewership on Fox, etc., has plummeted since the election. One of the reasons we don't get interrupted in our chat room as much by people screaming Trump 2020 is because he lost. And then all of the conspiracy theories about how it was going to change and he would really won and he was going to take over and he was going to have a second term, they didn't happen. So it's a lot harder to jump into our chat room right now saying Trump is greatest president ever, when if that was the case, he'd be sitting in office right now, not Joe Biden. So, I mean, I'm not going into chat rooms going like, Seattle Seahawks are the greatest team in the NFL. Oh, that's right. They lost in the first round of the playoffs. I'm going to stay quiet.
Focuses on the full range of communities who have been long underserved and overlooked. People of color, Americans with disabilities, LGBTQ Americans, religious minorities.
Right now, the right really doesn't have much to attack Biden on. They're like, oh, we're not unified yet. How come we're not unified? That idiot won't unify us. The other thing they're upset about is that he when he goes to these press conferences, I don't know if he's doing it today or not, but yesterday, the staff had a list of reporters to call on. Now, they hadn't pre-screened their questions. What they're doing is trying to make it fair and equitable because there are X number of reporters in the room. By the way, I've been holding it at the Executive Briefing Center, not at, I don't know where this one is, but they've been holding it in bigger venues so that more of the press can get in there. Not just in the tiny White House briefing room, which if you've spent some time watching West Wing or whatever, that room is tiny. You can't get, especially with social distancing, you just can't get all the members of the press in there that want to be in there. So he's been holding it in larger auditoriums, and in order to make it fair, so Peter Alexander doesn't get a question for the president every single time the president comes in. They give him a list of, here are some people who haven't been called on in a while or were keep creating. So that's fine. You delegate responsibility so you don't necessarily answer the loudest voice in the room every single time. Plus, it makes it more, by having a list and saying, okay, next question is going to be Peter Alexander or Wei Zhang or whomever it is. That way, you're not having everybody shout questions over top of each other. You're an organized Imagine that, a government that's just a little bit organized. But on Fox and Friends this morning, they were complaining that he's got a preordained list and that they've chosen, they're trying to block. Oh, and then he asked Peter Doocy, our guy. So that's what Biden did yesterday. He answered the questions on the list, and then he said, and I'll probably show this to you later, but I want to stay with this press conference right now. He says, I know you always ask me tough questions, but I still like you. Go ahead. Not on the list. He asked Peter Doocy a question, or let him ask a question, which he answered, and he admitted, you know what? When I said 1 million shots per day, I misspoke. I'm actually aiming for 1.5 million. Imagine that, a president who says, I misspoke. Yeah, and that's okay, because what does it do? Here's the ridiculousness of the entire process, is that, oh, he said 1 million. Did they think that once we reached 1 million shots per day, that we were just going to stop? No more vaccines today, everybody. Sorry, I don't make a new appointment online. Sorry, Grandma and Great-Grandpa. Head on out. No, That's just a goal. It's just, I'd like to get there. And now that the goalposts have been moved, which is good, we want more vaccinations. Still, Fox had a fit about it this morning. Stick around. We'll watch that after this. There's just so much news coming in, and it's all just regular stuff.
Rural, urban, suburban communities facing persistent poverty. And I've asked Ambassador Susan Rice to lead the administration's charge through the White House and Domestic Policy Council, because I know she'll see it through. Every White House component and every agency will be involved in this work, because advancing equity has to be everyone's job. Today, I'll be shortly signing an additional package of executive actions to continue this vital work. Housing, for example. Housing is a right in America, and home ownership is an essential tool to wealth creation and to be passed down to generations. Today, I'm directing the Department of Housing and Urban Affairs and Urban Development to redress the historical racism in federal housing policies. Today, I'm directing the federal agency to reinvigorate the consultation process with Indian tribes. Respect for tribal sovereignty will be a cornerstone of our engaging with Native American communities. This builds on the work we did last week to expand tribes' access to the Strategic National Stockpile for the first time, to ensure they receive help from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to fight this pandemic. Today, I'm directing federal agencies to combat resurgence of xenophobia, particularly against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders that we've seen skyrocket during this pandemic. This is unacceptable, and it's un-American. I've asked the Department of Justice to strengthen its partnership with the Asian American and Pacific Islander community to prevent those hate crimes. I've also asked the Department of Health and Human Services to put out best practices for combating xenophobia in our national response to COVID. Look, in the weeks ahead, I'll be reaffirming the federal government's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, building on the work we started in the Obama-Biden administration. That's why I'm rescinding the previous administration's harmful ban on diversity and sensitivity training and abolish the offensive counterfactual 1776 Commission.
Good.
Unity and healing must begin with understanding and truth, not ignorance and lie.
That's a good question. Where's Ben Carson? Did he just fall asleep somewhere in the executive briefing center and he's still there? Like, would anyone notice?
Today, I'm also issuing an executive order that will ultimately end the Justice Department's use of private prisons, an industry that houses pretrial detainees and federal prisoners. The executive order directs the Attorney General to decline to renew contracts with privately operated criminal facilities, a step we started to take at the end of the Obama administration and was reversed under the previous administration. This is the first step to stop corporations from profiting off of incarceration that is less humane and less safe, as the studies show. And it is just the beginning of my administration's plan to address systemic problems in our criminal justice system. Here's another thing we need to do. We need to restore and expand the Voting Rights Act, named after our dear friend John Lewis, and continue to fight back against laws that many states are engaged in to suppress the right to vote while expanding access to the ballot box for all eligible voters. Because here's the deal, and I'll close with this. I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. And the simple truth is, our soul will be troubled as long as systemic racism is allowed to persist. We can't eliminate it. It's not going to be overnight. We can't eliminate everything, but it's corrosive, it's destructive, and it's costly. It cost every American, not just who felt the sting of racial injustice. We are not just a nation of morally deprived because of systemic racism. We're also less prosperous. We're less successful. We're less secure. So we must change, and I know it's going to take time, but I know we can do it. And I firmly believe the nation is ready to change, but government has to change as well. We need to make equity and justice part of what we do every day, today, tomorrow, and every day.
Brief pause in the action here. I just thought of something. We could go by the LieStream because we're no longer the LieStream because so far I haven't caught the president in a lie. And if he is caught in a lie, he'll say, well, I misspoke because he will have misspoken. He won't have actually lied. I don't know. I'm just going to throw this title out there and see what you guys think. Facts and Friends. Because we spit facts and there's some friends over there in the chat room. Hi, friends. Facts and Friends. What do you think about that?
I'm going to sign these executive actions to continue the work to make real the promise of America for every American. Again.
It's supposed to remind you of Fox and Friends, Stephanie. Here's what I'd like to do. I would like to kind of get on a schedule where when I'm not working on a television set, I'm able to wake up, start, and this is what I do anyway usually as I'm making my coffee. I want to get a coffee machine in here so I can get out of bed, go to the bat room, put on my Batman outfit, and come in here, start up my coffee, or even, you know what? I have a coffee maker. I have a coffee maker in the garage that I could set up in here to brew overnight so that when I walk in here at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., or whenever my stupid body wakes me up, I'm able just to go like, hey, good morning, everybody. Boom. A little fridge, little like, I'll find like a tiny fridge or something to keep my creamer cold. Say, good morning. Let's check out Facts and Friends. Welcome to Facts and Friends. I'd like that. Okay, we're gonna do Facts and Friends. And then I'd also like to either cover Tucker or Sean Hannity in the evening. Not every day, because it's God, Hannity is so repetitive. It's the same thing over and over again. It's like a mental hammer that the lies are the nails, and he just has to pound it in, but he's pounding it into concrete over and over and over again every night. And it's all nonsense because Madonna blew up the White House.
I'm not promising we can end it tomorrow, but I promise you we're going to continue to make progress to eliminate systemic racism.
At random, what is super easy to do?
And every branch of the White House and the federal government is going to be part of that effort. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so he signs the executive order. Hold on.
And the federal government.
Okay, so here's something that's happened too. Remember Trump? I almost called him Mr. Sharpie. Would just take a Sharpie and sign the executive order with the Sharpie. Do his electrocardiogram, and then take the box of the Sharpies and just hand out the box. Just spread the COVID with the box. With pens that were not used to sign the law. Biden is doing okay, I'm going to sign a little bit with this one and the last name with another pen. And if he got people there, then he hands out those pens that were actually used to sign. It's like going to a baseball game. You bid on a charity item of some point. The difference between a game-used bat or a hockey stick, for example, it would be like a player played the entire game with a hockey stick and then just gave you, hold on, I'm going to open this pack of new hockey sticks. There you go. You can have those hockey sticks, which is great because then you can play hockey, but that's not really the point of the pens. So he's got a box of pens here. I don't see anybody else in there with him to do that, but it's just nice to, I see. You're doing things that make sense. Trump never did anything that made sense. Trump was the Wizard of Oz.
This first executive order is a member.
Systemic racism doesn't exist, says Edward. Welcome, Edward. If you have some facts to back that statement up, we'd love to hear them. We are open to hearing different people's opinions, and let us know what you're saying there with the systemic racism doesn't exist. I mean, the government under both Obama and Trump has determined that systemic racism exists, because you can't possibly say that it doesn't when there are so many different organizations that have systems. Some of them, systemic racism exists. I mean, are you talking about the country as a whole? Are you talking, I mean, you know, the country that started off with slavery? Are you talking about that? Or, let us know.
Random for the second.
Wait, Marcy, you caught a foul ball? A foul bat? You caught a foul bat? Wait. The guy's bat, like he swung and let it go, and you caught the bat in midair? And he wanted it back? Was that minor leagues? Because in the minor leagues, you can keep the balls, but you can't keep the bats.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development to redress our nation's and the federal government's history of discriminatory housing practices and policies.
I mean, we have had discriminatory housing practices and policies. There was the red line. Look it up. That was systemic racism. There is no question that was systemic racism. Oh, hold on. Congratulations to executive producer Joanna for being first. Wait, what did I'm blocking.
Next executive order is reforming incarceration system by
Okay,
eliminating
so this is what's
the
going on. I'm going to get rid of myself here, and I'll show you guys what's happening. Give me a second to make myself go away. Or maybe not. There, I'm gone. Watch what he does in this area right here. He's got two boxes. He's got a new box of pens, and then he takes the used pen, which was used to sign, for example. Man, if I could get my hands on a Joe Biden do away with racism pen, because this will be it. That'll be the end of racism once he signs the... That would be cool. Anyways, so if anybody wants to know what to get me for Easter, because I've always believed that I should get gifts on Easter, and it's coming up at some point. Nobody knows when Easter is. That's the cool part about Easter. The only thing I know about Easter is that the day after Easter is the best day to buy candy. He signs, and then he puts it into a separate box that I see. Now I'm blocking the stupid. I hate these, by the way. Any system that you use, this is YouTube TV. With you fast forward, and then it goes all gray up here, and it blocks the score, or this thing comes up and it blocks the score, or what you're trying to look. There's no reason. I don't need that. I can scroll down if I want to know what I'm watching. And why would I not know what I'm watching? How rare is that instance where you're like, wait a second, what is this that I'm watching that I just tuned to? Give it for a second, but it doesn't have to come up every single time I move my mouse to that area.
use of privately operated criminal detention facilities.
And just like that, with a stroke of a pen, Biden has eliminated the federal use of private prisons. And private prisons donate a lot of money to political campaigns, and that's how this country operates. Biden don't care. Gonna put that pen away. Okay, grabs a new pen.
Third executive order
Yeah.
is a memorandum for the heads of the executive departments.
Okay, so he's banned. I have to read the executive order, but no new prisons, private prisons. Is that we're not going to engage with any new prisons? Not as good, but these things take time.
And agencies, tribal consultation and strengthening nation-to-nation relationships. And the last executive order is condemning and combating racism, xenophobia, and intolerance against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders of the United States.
So a lot of these executive orders that he's signing, they're all sort of the same thing. they're not all of them. What I'm saying is that against Asians, against let's explore, those could be one executive order. They could. But signing them multiply does a couple of things. Creates more of a chance that one of you can get me one of those pens, is what it does, really. Biden's already signed 33 executive orders. He's mandating by tyranny. He's just, a lot of them are the same thing. It's okay. And presidents are able to do that. And I'm sure what that executive order actually says, it could be an order, could be a memorandum, they call them all executive orders, is, hey, let's take a look at this. Let's really take a look at this and concentrate on why there is this amount of racial injustice when it comes to Native Americans or whatever the thing happens to say. Again, these are not laws. These are executive orders that tell the executive branch, which is everything in the government pretty much except the judicial branch and the legislatures. So everything from the DOJ to the FBI to the Department of Treasury to the Forestry Department, whatever, basically saying, let's try and operate this way.
I think the country's ready, and I know this administration's ready. Thank you.
Mr. President, what you talking to Vladimir Putin about?
You.
Mr. President, how is he?
Wait, what is that?
I think the country's ready, and I know this administration's ready. Thank you.
Mr. President, what you talking to Vladimir Putin about?
What'd you talk to Vladimir Putin about? The response?
You.
And he sends his best. I don't know who shouted that out. That's funny. Somebody on Twitter will know who shouted that out. I don't. Let me pull up the Twitter here quickly. And let's type Biden and Putin. And it was Peter Doocy. That was going to be my guess. It was Peter Doocy from Fox. Said, what did you talk to Vladimir Putin about? You. It's the same. Peter Doocy was the one, if you remember, when Joe Biden was riding by on his bicycle before the election, and he said, who's going to be your pick for vice president? And Biden turned over and said, you. So, I like that. But he doesn't know where it is. Now, on Fox News, that will become, he thinks that Vladimir Putin talked about that. Why is he talking about the freedom of the press to Vladimir Putin? What kind of a president? He says his best. I still have that feeling between watching a Trump conference or presser, or, he used to just come out and make a statement, but then he'd attack the press, attack. So he gets a question. He answered questions yesterday, by the way. He doesn't have to answer any questions today. I mean, he makes the rules. He's the president, but the question is shouted out. I want to show you. I can't show you this guy. This Daily Show thing. You know what? I think I can. Hold on. Let me pull it up because I think I retweeted it early today. The Daily Show did a montage of questions asked. Yeah, here it is right here. I'll show it to you guys, and I'm gonna pause it sort of in between because I got a copyright violation. And it's not, what I'm doing is perfectly fine on YouTube, but the algorithms can't tell that. And we've got music in the background that gives a possible strike for the algorithm to key in on the audio. So let's just, this is Lou Dobbs.
The national left-wing media has undergone a fundamental transformation. They are gushing over President Biden.
Okay, so now they're going to go back, obviously. And the reason I'm pausing this and explaining this, and this is all self-explanatory, is because otherwise the YouTube, again, when I've appealed and said, no, so the inauguration, Japanese television put a copyright strike on me for the inauguration, and then I wrote back and said, you guys don't own this. YouTube went ahead and released that, so now that video is available for monetization. So it does work. It sometimes takes some time. But yeah, this is great. This is from The Daily Show.
You are, if I may say, everything is advertised as you ran for president. You're also one of the most loved and respected
I would say that also.
Lou Dobbs fawned over President Trump for 4 years. I haven't watched Dobbs in a few days. Nobody has. The viewer ratership, I don't even know what that means, but you know what I mean. I don't. Has plummeted for Fox. Last week, CNN on Friday, CNN and MSNBC tied for number one. Rachel Maddow has won her time slot, the same time slot as Hannity, for the last, I don't know if she won yesterday, but she won 9 days in a row before that. People are just not tuning into Hannity right now. And Hannity is already talking about the next election.
In history.
Well, get ready. It's going to be 4 years of nauseating, gauzy coverage.
This is TV Karen.
Watchdogs, well, they're just lapdogs. Are you having fun in this job?
I am.
Is it?
I love it.
Look at the economy.
Take a look.
Are you getting the credit for this economic revival?
Wow. And that's how it happened. I remember that interview. Hey, Chris Wilson.
They continue to fawn over this guy like he's Jesus Christ. The media, pretty vicious, not just to you, but to your family. How do you process that?
The answer.
I gotta say here, though, Deucey, the Deuce on Fox and Friends, he will occasionally slip in some reality, which then just blows Brian Kilmeade's head out of the water.
The question is, mainstream media loves him.
Right over there is your hotel.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful?
It's a beautiful hotel.
But Biden gets a question about ice cream. Anyway, you guys can watch this on the show. I think any more than this, and I will get hit with a copyright strike. I mean, it's no YMCA, but the Daily Show are very, very protective of their material, as they should be. And I'm now doing political commentary on that material. And expanding to it and providing educational content, theoretically. He is. Yeah, Deucey does sometimes, and it's usually something personal, like what he talked about. For example, this was Steve Deucey. Hold on. I will find it. It'll take me a second here because I've moved things around. But I do want to share this with you guys because this is an example on Fox and Friends that just blew away the rest of their content. Just, let's see. No violence. Here we go. This, and I posted this several times when people were arguing with me saying that masks don't work and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, okay, well, here, this is far left, wacko, radical Democrat Fox and Friends explaining masks.
Ultimately, right now, what's going on with the pandemic is...
Hold on, because you can't see that. So I will move it around. There you go. How's that, kids?
And we don't know exactly how many people may have been infected over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, but the number of cases in our hospitals is going through the roof. In 41 states, it's going up. I read a great survey, and they looked at the scientific data in my home state of Kansas. In the month of July, they had a statewide mandate for masks. Now, the problem with Kansas was some counties would actually enforce it and other counties would not. In the counties that enforced the mask mandate, the number of cases of coronavirus actually went way down. And in the counties where they did not enforce the mask mandate, it went way up.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. You just have to do it smartly and do it safely.
It means, apparently, masks work.
4 million U.S. cases in the month of November alone. That's a third of the total number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. since this pandemic began. All right,
moving on. And Kilmeade doesn't say anything. Let's see. This is Kilmeade from this morning. This man has 2 television shows now. They put him on at 4 o'clock on Fox. At least he was on last week at 4 o'clock. I didn't look yesterday. 2 shows on Fox, plus his 2 or 3 hour radio show. I don't know how long it goes on, but I catch it from time to time for a few minutes. I can't take it for very long. This man who grew up in the U.S. school system.
Joe Biden has been hot and heavy with executive orders. That means signing things unilaterally that he has pledged to do because that was his agenda.
Yeah, that's how presidents sign executive orders. They're signed unilaterally because he's the executive. Nobody else has to sign an executive order. So by definition, here he is. And I apologize in advance for this. And I know it's going to hurt some of you, but
Heavy with executive orders. That means signing things unilaterally that he has pledged to do because that was his agenda when he ran. Irregardless, the Joe.
That's it. I won't play it again. That's too many to begin with. For those of you who don't know, irregardless is not a word. Regardless is exactly the same word, works just as well. Irregardless, not a word. 2 television shows. Fox has given him 2 television shows, despite numerous incidences of him saying irregardless. And being wrong just about every time he uses irregardless. For those of you who don't know, I know that incidences is not a word either. Just say incidents. It's fine. That works. That's just one of my pet peeves. Let's move on, folks. Do you guys want to go back and cover the rest of the Jen Psaki press conference? Or should we? Might be time to wrap it up. This has already been more than an hour. I did promise you we'd do Fox and Friends. Let's do Fox and Friends, because I did promise that. And when I say promise, I misspoke. Hold on. Let's go back to, I will search for it. And it'll come up. There it is. So we'll start doing Fox and Friends. What am I wrong about, OJ? So much. Just in general.
Crisis. When is he not talking about climate?
This is, okay.
Through someone's bedroom.
So hurricane in Alabama, tragic. They moved on from that.
He has
Hotel in Fultondale, they were able to get everybody out of the rooms and into a secure location.
So let's move on. Joe Biden has been hot and heavy with executive orders. That means signing things unilaterally that he has pledged to do because that was his agenda when he ran. Irregardless of 6.7% unemployment, regardless of the massive spending.
See, he knows that it's not a word because he just used regardless.
Regardless of the pandemic and other challenges around the globe, he's moving ahead with his executive order bonanza.
Yeah, because he's the president. Trump signed more executive orders per week than Obama and Bush, and he was never on here saying executive orders. Oh, but the Democrats refused to pass laws. Well, yeah, but Trump had control, full control of the Senate and the House for 2 full years. And then what happened? Well, in the midterms, the people decided we don't like that. We do not like this Trump. They got rid of him, at least in the House. And now they've gotten rid of him in the Senate and himself as well. Trump has lost everything. The people of the United States have spoken overwhelmingly, repetitively, and they say we don't want any more incidences of Trump, irregardless of what Brian Kilmeade thinks.
And it's really, he says yesterday, it's about America, putting America first and making America. But it honestly is actually all about a party agenda and very little about American jobs. Think about this. No more drilling on federal land. How is that going to affect the oil and gas industry negatively? How about the...
Yes. Yeah, that is true. Very, very minimally, because about 3% of oil is actually drilled on federal land. And by the way, they're not stopping the oil and fracking on federal land, the drilling and the fracking. What they're doing is saying no new contracts.
The XL pipeline lost 11,000 jobs minimum, let alone our relations with Canada. And look at the rest of his agenda. Today, racial equality. Tomorrow, the climate crisis. When is he not talking about climate? On Thursday, health care. Okay.
When is he not talking about climate? Brian asks. Well, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, all not talking about climate.
Okay, Friday immigration, but there's not much bipartisanship that I'm getting so far, guys. All we have is this is what I'm going to do. I'll explain some of it, and then I got to go back to signing other stuff.
Well, that's what President.
Thank you. I haven't watched this yet, but he's about to say that's what presidents do.
Presidents do in the first week because
not like this. Care, okay, Friday immigration, but there's not much bipartisanship that I'm getting so far, guys.
Because he won. He won. But if you want it to be bipartisan, come on board. The American people have spoken. They said, we want it this way. He's doing it this way. If you want to be bipartisan, start agreeing with it. It's fine. Solar and wind and all of the other clean energy jobs are increasing faster than any other jobs in any sector in the United States. Get on board.
We have is this is what I'm going to do. I'll explain some of it, and then I got to go back to signing other stuff.
Well, that's what presidents do in the first week because
not like this. This is a historic.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, he signed more executive. Right, he's also had more things to get rid of, like the stupid 1776 commission that Trump established.
Because he and his team have been ready to go. They've got a whole list of stuff to do because they know it's going to be really hard to get stuff done in Congress. Yesterday what they did with the executive order is Joe Biden is pushing the federal government to buy more U.S.-made products, which is a good thing. On that list of things they're going to do, today is racial equality as equity, that is to say, as Brian mentioned. But tomorrow they're going to deal with the climate crisis. And you know what they're going to do? What? There's an interesting item in the New York Times today that says that they are considering, during this coronavirus pandemic, FEMA has taken a leading role. They're thinking about taking some of the overall FEMA budget and reallocating up to $10 billion. And what are they going to use that FEMA COVID money for? Climate change.
Climate change. Yeah.
Well, do you remember Pete Buttigieg?
Yeah, and what does FEMA deal with? Climate events. Among other things, but forest fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, FEMA stuff. What part of, is that climate? No, hurricanes, that's because of infrastructure, right? Is that? It actually partly is, now that I'm saying it. The levees, etc. But yeah, it's all climate related, so. But oh my God, you can't do that.
Judge, when he went through his confirmation hearing, he talked about the Keystone Pipeline, and he was.
Oh, hey, Cujo, congratulations on a new grandson. Good work. Solid. Is this your first? Is this your potentially last? You don't know, do you? How many grandkids do you have now, Cujo? That's fantastic.
Asked by Republicans, what about the jobs? Right. Thousands of people are going to be without their jobs. And he said, well, then they can just go get another job when you look at what they're doing for climate change.
New jobs will be created, yes. And one person's job doesn't outweigh the entire human race. It's like a Star Trek episode.
Get out that magic wand.
Exactly. And John Hofmeister from Shell Oil, he used to be the president there. He said, we're going to struggle.
This is Cujo's third grandchild, so all grandchildren are awesome. So that's fantastic.
Until we get to these alternatives.
I think actually like your second or your third might be a little bit better emotionally, just because you don't have to sort of say like, oh my God, I'm a grandparent. How am I a grandparent? I'm like 38 years. Oh, hold on. I'm 53 years. So congratulations on that. That's good news.
He said instead, oil prices are going to go up. It's going to be more expensive to fill up your car.
I don't know. I'm not a grandparent yet. But is that a thing emotionally that you have to deal with? Like, holy, someone just called me grandma? No. I am nobody's grandma, kid. You go get nickels somewhere else. But is there... Yeah, I know. I'm actually looking forward to being a grandparent because I'll be like, here you go. Here's the cute 2-year-old. I'm giving them back now because I would like to watch something on TV.
Production of oil is going to go down, and meanwhile, we're going to help Russia, we're going to help the Middle East and all the OPEC countries. Well, Neil Crabtree was on with Sean Hannity last night. He is a welding foreman. He has 3 boys to feed at home, and he said that when the president signed that executive order to get rid of the Keystone Pipeline, it got rid of his job. He was fired immediately. He got in his truck, he admits, and he just wept. He just...
By the way, the Keystone Pipeline would provide construction jobs for a temporary period. The Keystone Pipeline, the study's been done, and basically about 35 permanent jobs. That whole pipeline that will bring so much money to the oil industry itself creates 35 permanent jobs. There are temporary construction jobs, but you know where else there's a lot of construction jobs? Everywhere else. As the economy grows, as the economy is making a comeback, housing starts are at a record. Did I just talk about this today? Was it yesterday? It must have been yesterday. But yeah, there's other jobs available. And yes, there's a ton of people that are unemployed right now. But there are jobs that will be created out there. And the Keystone Pipeline will have more deleterious effects on the economy as a whole than perhaps benefits as we move away and become energy independent. And by the way, we're not energy independent right now. We are still exporting oil.
Cried.
Oh, and by the way, the Keystone Pipeline, that's imported oil. Did I just say exported? We're still importing oil from other countries. Canada, as much as I love that place, that's another country. That is imported oil, and it's filthy oil, by the way. Tar sands is just... It is the worst kind of oil you can imagine in terms of the environmental effect.
And he wrote on Facebook, felt a sick feeling in his stomach and an aching in his heart. Yeah. Here he is last night.
So now they care about people's feelings.
This is
I feel badly for the guy, by the way. I'm not making fun of the guy. Losing your job is never fun. Never fun.
American job issue. I don't care if you're union or non-union. This administration is attacking our industry altogether. This new administration it's after the industry as a whole. Not just, it doesn't matter if you're union or non-union tonight. I'm looking at all Americans. I'm trying to stand up for American workers. This is a fight that we need to be in together. Where are these jobs? I mean, the last time I looked, we're about a 7% unemployment rate. They're trying to tell me to find another job when we can't even provide jobs for the people that are in this country. That would be the first question I'd ask the new transportation secretary. Where are these jobs?
And of well, solar and wind, etc., they each grew at about 100% last year. So there are jobs out there. I know 2 people who work in wind energy. I don't know that I know. Oh, I do know some people who work in oil in the tar sands in Alberta. Tar sands, not Tarzans. I wish they worked in the tar sands. That would be so cool.
Of course, that's oil that's going to flow through that pipeline. Of course, that's steel that's going to be bought from Americans. And of course, those are American workers that are going to make that pipeline. And of course, our great ally, Canada, are the people who are going to purchase from. By the way, that oil is going to go somewhere.
Now Canada's the great ally. Before, they were charging us increases on tariffs on butter, and so Canada had to be stopped. Now they're the great ally.
Where?
Now we got to take in foreign oil because it's from white people.
It's just not going to go through America into the Texas Panhandle and out to different shipping containers. So you're not saving anything. What you're doing is you're actually just acquiescing to your extreme left, and you're doing it with a pen, not getting any type of consensus. I imagine there's a lot of moderates like Kirsten Sinema, especially Joe Manchin, who can't be happy about this. On top of that, when you talk about jobs, think about the $15 minimum wage that just jacked up. Well, I want people to make more money. That's fine. Well, what about the...
It's over a course of several years, by the way. We talked about that. And if minimum wage, we talked a little bit about minimum wage math, and then I looked up some more figures last night. You're probably talking about overall about 1.5 million people losing their minimum wage jobs, which were underpaying them to begin with. But most of those 1.5 million people will be reemployed in a matter of months with jobs that pay them more. And while they're on unemployment, because of the new minimum wage standards, and unemployment being based on minimum wage, their unemployment will pay them just as much, if not more, than they were making on the minimum wage. It depends on the states. If you're living in a smart state, by the way, if you live in a red state, move to a better state.
Pandemic. I know, and you're doing this to small businesses. And
Has anyone seen any stats on mathematically when you take taxes versus no taxes versus sales tax versus minimum wage, etc.? Where is the best state to live in the United States? Just speaking economically. Where is it? I don't know. That'd be an interesting thing to say. They do like the best city to live in. They do stuff like that, but that has to do with crime in schools and stuff like that. Financially speaking, has anybody ever seen this is now, right now, the best place to live in the United States?
there's no argument. They've been hit harder during the pandemic than anybody else. And these Democratic governors and mayors who are refusing to open up their towns until a Democratic president has taken over just adds to the angst.
You just mentioned Kristen Sinema of Arizona and Joe Manchin of West Virginia. They have
this whole people are now opening up America because Trump is gone. Trump was saying that right after the election they're going to open things up, and so now California just reopened. They got rid of the Safer at Home, but it was based on statistics. Keep in mind that Safer at Home went back into effect after Trump had already lost. Now, as of today, Safer at Home has been rescinded, but this has all happened with nothing to do with Trump. Absolutely nothing to do with Biden's election. Nothing. This was post-election.
Made it very clear that they would not sign on to getting rid of the filibuster, so it looks as if...
Yeah, but which state is the best to live in for cost of living? What is that state? I'm curious. Like, what are the best states to live in when you factor in all of the economic consequences of being in that state?
They don't have to worry about that on the Republican side. Meanwhile, in addition to the executive orders that the president signed yesterday, he had his first press availability. It was because of COVID restrictions. They had it at the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, a great big building that sits next to the White House. And Joe Biden talked a lot about what was going on, the future of Made in America, as you can see by that backdrop right there. And just like we have seen him during the transition, he had a list prepared with, like, I don't know, 5 or so names of different news organizations. Once again, Fox News not on the list, but that very tall kid who used to live upstairs in my house is very noisy. And as the vice president, or rather, as the president left, Peter Doocy tried to get his attention, and you know what? It worked.
Yeah?
Wait. I know he always asks me tough questions. He always has it.
Okay, so here's Biden going out of his way to take an additional question that he knows is going to be a tough question. And they're criticizing him for this.
An edge to them, but I like him anyway, so go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you just said that you think within 3 weeks or so we'll be at the point where there are 1 million vaccines per day, but it seems like...
No, I think we'll get there before that. I said, I misspoke. I hope we'll be able to increase as we go on till we get to the 1.5 million a day. That's my hope.
Okay, so...
Okay, and there was further discussion between the two of them as well, but yeah. The outrage! He goes by a list! It's organized. This is an outrage. Oh, and then he asked our guy, we're on Fox right now. This is Fox and Friends. You can see behind us. And then below us right here, right over there, it says Fox and Friends, Fox News, right there. He asked the reporter from Fox, my brother. He asked my actual brother. Actually, I don't know if that's his brother or his son. I honestly don't know. Does anybody know? Does anybody care? But I don't know. I don't know how much fairer you can be than to ask the relative of the person on the station that is now criticizing you for not asking for questions from them. According to the internet, Mississippi is the most affordable state. Okay. Isn't Mississippi like last in education and just about everything else?
Peter got the president to admit that he had misspoken, because he had said, elect me, I'm going to make sure that we get 100 million doses into the arms of Americans within 100 days. And as it turns out,
They were already doing it.
On Inauguration Day, 1.6 million, which flies in the face of the Biden advisors'
Okay, but there also are places that have run out of vaccines. There are places that have told people, for example, Bellingham, Washington, Skagit County, you can get your first dose. We're not sure if we're going to get the second dose. There are many communities now that are not scheduling until they actually have the vaccine in hand. There are a number of vaccines that have gone wasted because of this disorganization. So, keeping up the 1 million per day pace, that's not going to be an automatic. New York I can't remember, did New York run out of vaccines or not last week? But there's all sorts of places that have scheduled and then have said, you know what, we didn't get the vaccines, sorry. So yeah, it's still going to be an effort to get there. And again, why are we criticizing somebody for wanting to vaccinate everybody? What? You're looking for something there. You're looking for something to grab onto and lash out at because you're hurting. I get it. Your guy lost.
suggestion that the Trump team left no plan. Clearly, they had a plan.
But there's no difference. Here's the difference. When Peter asks a question, he's polite.
Yeah.
He asks direct questions, but he's polite. Think about that compared to Jim Acosta. The hostility that most of the press corps has.
Yeah, Jim Acosta often asked very polite questions, and Kayleigh McEnany and Trump would attack him, and they actually suspended him. But if you go back and look at Acosta's questions, I can't remember a single time where Jim Acosta was rude. And again, they're the press. They're supposed to push politicians. That's how it's done. And what Peter Doocy did here was absolutely fine. Absolutely. He asked for some clarification. Before he even finished the question, Biden's like, yeah, I misspoke. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I meant to say. And that's fine. That's all. This is how it's supposed to work.
Towards Trump.
So, here's what happened. Fox News wants to talk about how Biden is not letting the press ask questions. They are picking and choosing. They're cherry picking all of the questions. Oh, they asked our guy? Oh, yeah, but just the executive orders. All the presidents sign executive orders. Yeah, but not like this. But the questions, well, they asked our guy and he asked a question and then they answered his question. Yeah, but not like this. He wasn't rude. They're just grasping at the straws. It is so pathetic.
Was so over the top and so not reminiscent of the respect the offense gets. But Peter asked direct questions with an
Jim Acosta asked over-the-top questions.
Like, he's inquisitive. He wants an answer.
Right.
He's not looking to get famous. That's the difference.
I wrote Steve the other night. I said, you raised him.
That Jim Acosta is looking to get famous. Jim Acosta, we both know who he is. Brian Kilmeade and I both know who Jim Acosta is. Never met the man, but I know who he is. He's also a White House correspondent for CNN. The most watched cable news network on the planet. Jim Acosta will sometimes host. But Jim Acosta just wants to be famous. Wow, what's Jim Acosta going to be like when he's famous?
Well, and he said his mama did.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. They're not gotcha questions. They're just questions that no.
It wasn't another journalist. It was the page for the White House or the staffer for the White House holding the microphone who was trying to take the microphone away. And the White House edited the tape so that it made it look like he violently knocked the person's hand. And that's just not what happened in real time.
Nobody else is asking.
Yeah. Well,
why is that?
Liz Peek, she wrote an op-ed on FoxNews.com, and she said, lucky Joe Biden, COVID got him elected, and the receding COVID gives him a good chance of being a successful president in spite of himself. She goes on to write that Biden will take...
In spite of himself? What does that even mean? That he's got a chance at being a good president in spite of himself? No, that would mean that he would try and sabotage. That he would somehow, I don't know, what would you call it? Downplay the epidemic. That's how, if he was bad, that's what he would do, which is exactly what another president did. I don't want to say his name. He who shall not be president.
Credit, and his faithful cheerleaders in the liberal press will echo the claim.
And you know what? I'm not going to just let me interject. I'll let you finish. New cases are down 31% in the last 2 weeks. Nothing to do with Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Deaths are down 4%, and that's a lagging indicator, so that's going to really pick up.
Oh, now he knows that death is a lagging indicator.
Go ahead.
Right, and then Real Clear Politics, a reporter tweeted out to the Peter Doocy question, because a member of his staff, of President Biden's staff, was heard calling on specific reporters to ask their questions of the president, and Fox News was on the list. And he tweeted out this Real Clear Politics reporter. A White House handler is calling on reporters by name and by outlet one by one to ask Biden a question, unlike Trump, who called on reporters as the spirit moved him. But it works for Joe Biden. I mean, listen.
Yeah, it works. It's actually much better, and the reporters will have a more fair distribution of questions. That's the theory behind it.
He didn't really get out of his house because of coronavirus. We understand that. But he didn't take a lot of questions. He's very measured. Right. And when they choose who's going to ask the questions, then he doesn't get that gotcha question.
He took questions, and then he actually called on your guy who was trying to do a gotcha question. Here's something that you said that isn't accurate. Yeah, I misspoke. That's a gotcha question if you sit there and deny it and try and pile onto it with, oh no, that's not what I said. No, you're mishearing things. You're a terrible reporter. You're disgusting. The American people, you're a disgrace. You're a disgrace. No, he didn't. He said, you know what? I misspoke. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do, and we want to save American lives.
I mean, I watched him yesterday on the prompter and this. He does seem to struggle with these topics, and I think
He does not. There was zero struggling yesterday. Did we watch it together? I know I watched some of it, but I can't remember if we watched it together or not on the LieStream on Facts and Friends.
Staff is worried about, and they're going to insulate him for the next 4 years. Remember, he just snapped the other day at the same question Peter asked him, because when someone said, wait a second, $1 million
he did not snap. He said, come on, man.
Day is not much of a difference. Oh, come on, Pat. Come on, man. What are you talking about?
That's not snapping. That's a long way from snapping.
Now, 3 days later, people talked to him and said...
Now, and Daniel Dale has hit on this a few times. He told the reporter that, I forget his exact words, but something along the lines of, a week ago you guys were saying it was impossible to get there. And now you're saying it's too, come on, man. To 100 million vaccines and 100 million. Now, Daniel Dale's looked at it and said the vast majority of reporters believed that 100 million was a reasonable goal. And that's actually accurate from what I've seen. But there were also many examples. I posted one of Dr. Person, Woman, Man, Camera, TV, that guy on Fox News. He was saying that it's possible, but that Biden, what did he say? Biden will probably do it unsafely. I posted it. I'll find it. But yeah, but snapping? Everything's about framing on Fox.
You know, you really should up that number to 1.5 because $1 million's not going to get it done, and Trump's already doing that.
Right. And so when Peter asked that question, the president admitted that he had misspoken. And to the president's credit, while he's got that list prepared by the staff,
what is the deuce doing giving the president credit? He's a Democratic president. That is not what we do on Fox and Friends, Deuce.
Saw Peter, and he just said, I know he asked hard questions, but they got an edge. And he asked the question, and the president answered it.
Well, hopefully we do get to 1.5 a day. That'd be wonderful.
That would be fantastic. All right. Yeah. Meanwhile, let's talk about what is going on with COVID in California. Right now, Los Angeles County is the epicenter for the COVID coronavirus pandemic in the United States. And suddenly yesterday, the governor, Gavin Newsom, announced that he is lifting those awfully restrictive stay-at-home orders. If you missed it, here's the governor.
All regions effective immediately are no longer in the stay-at-home order and will move back into the blueprint, a blueprint many of you are familiar with, the blueprint we refer to as a blueprint for a safer economy. We're seeing a flattening of the curve. Everything that should be up is up. Everything that should be down is down.
Okay, and here's the thing. California has kept their metrics secret until yesterday, and they explained it. It has to do with ICU usage and capacity and things like that. And it's still very high there, and the number of daily deaths is very high. 761 people died on Thursday. The number of people dying in ICUs has doubled since October. But nonetheless, he says, hey, it's okay. We can lift that order. And of course, Ainsley and Brian, it has nothing to do with that recall suggestion where they've got 1.2 million signatures on a petition. They need 1.5 by March. It looks like he will be, at least they're going to have it on the ballot.
We're just beginning the last week of January. They need until mid-March to get those few extra signatures. They have a lot already. They need 1.5. Then it will be a recall, which will take it to a statewide ballot. Gavin Newsom says,
at this point, I would vote to recall Gavin Newsom. I would vote, let's get a new governor in there because of that fiasco with the French Laundry, where he went out and spent a bunch of money with a bunch of people during a time when you're not supposed to be around people who are not in your own household. He had dinner with 9 people, no masks, sitting in an enclosed space. I'd vote him out. I don't care, Democrat or not. I do not care.
He's opening up. You don't have to stay at home anymore. He says it's not political. Randy Economy, the senior advisor for the recall, disagrees. Listen.
He knows he's in the process of being recalled from office. And
wait, his name is Randy Economy? His name is actually Economy. What? What? He is the senior advisor to the Gavin Newsom recall effort. What does that even mean? But his name is Economy.
Thrown out, and it's because of the people. It's electrified every single voter in California, and now it's the time for the people to revolt against Gavin Newsom. I mean, he basically has held everybody in lockdown for 10 months now.
I think the recall has to reach the position level of 1.5 or whatever they said it was. I think it's 1.5. X percentage of the voters by March. And then that would be on our November election.
And today he basically said,
unless there's something I don't know, because it's not often that they do recalls. They did one, remember, that's how Schwarzenegger got in office. They recalled the current governor, Gray somebody, whatever his name was. So then that opened up for a new election. But at this point, I'm not particularly worried about a Republican winning California.
Mea culpa. Well, I guess everything's going to be okay.
Randy Economy translates in the UK as horny money. That is correct, Rich.
Okay, now we can go back in opening and let's just get back to normal. Everything's all right, guys. And the reason why he did that is because we have
Gray Davis, thank you.
About 1.3 million people right now who have already signed our petition to recall him from office, and this is serious stuff now.
So it's going to be important for people to understand in California that people have to make a living. The woman I spoke to yesterday who owns that restaurant says by Friday they expect to be eating outdoors. In California, they can actually eat outdoors without windburn, unlike here in New York, where you need 3 layers. They're selling Under Armour if you want to sit there for an appetizer or a dessert.
It's worth it. It is so worth it.
Maybe.
I'm eating a lot of soup outside.
It's a joke. You're sitting in a...
I'm eating a lot of soup outside in New York. Why? Just have soup at home. Eat it. You got your own little desk right there that's socially. You have your soup at your desk. Who eats soup? Who goes to a restaurant and orders soup? I mean, yeah, French restaurant, like get some good onion soup. Come on, you're going to a restaurant. Order something of substance. Soup.
Little lean-to with the top down, everything zipped up. It's more dangerous than sitting there with huge ceilings, like in a room like we're in right now.
To the heater.
And there's no logic to it. The other thing to keep in mind, we don't have
there is some logic to it.
Time to talk about it now. In places like Illinois And in places like New York City and in places like Chicago, they have to open up the schools. The ventilation's getting fixed. Everything's being done. Money's being given. Vaccinations given to the teachers. And they still won't open up the schools.
the union.
These K through 8th graders need to go back to public
Because all of that is not happening, is the problem.
schools. The ones that are being hurt are the lowest income people whose parents most likely both are working if you have two in the family. That has to stop. If not, just stop vaccinating teachers. If they're not going to go back to work, stop vaccinating them.
Well,
in which Brian Kilmeade threatened the teachers of America. You know what? If you're not going to go back to work, you can just die. You can just die, teachers of America, for your $32,000 of taxpayer money every single year and your 3 months vacation and your half-day Wednesdays. Oh, please, teachers of America. I'm just going to capture that. Let's watch that again.
Like Illinois and in places like New York City and in places like Chicago, they have to open up the schools. The ventilation's getting fixed. Everything's being done. Money's being given. Vaccinations given to the teachers. And they still won't open up the schools.
the union.
These K through 8th graders need to go back to public schools. The ones that are being hurt are the lowest income people whose parents most likely both are working if you have two in the family. That has to stop. If not, just stop vaccinating teachers. If they're not going to go back to work, stop vaccinating them.
well, and to the question of whether or not it's political with the recall, remember, it was back in 2003 that the state of California...
The schools do not have the money to do what they have to do. That's why part of the $1.9 trillion package allocates money to schools so that the kids can go back to school safely. That's why. But hey, let's just stop vaccinating teachers. Even the 65-year-old teachers.
California had a recall election on Gray Davis, and that's how they wound up with
Gray Davis, thank you.
Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor of the state. So it does work. Is it gonna? Are they gonna wind up with the same punishment for Mr. Newsom? Stay tuned.
They got to have another election right after the recall. Meanwhile,
That's
Koli
how it works.
Shimkus is...
Wait, are they? Is it going to be right after? Hold on, let's see when our election is. Recall election. Here, we'll listen more. You guys listen. I'll look it up.
upstairs with the latest news.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning, Steve Ainsley Bryan. President Joe Biden telling reporters off camera that Democrats won't have enough votes to convict former President Trump in his second impeachment trial. House Democrats formally delivered the articles of impeachment to the Senate. The trial will begin February 9th. Republicans already pushing back because Senate President pro tempore Patrick Leahy will preside over the hearings instead of Chief Justice John Roberts. They say it's a conflict of interest, but Leahy says he will be impartial. A sad day for the world of sports, as today marks 1 year since Kobe Bryant's death. The NBA legend and his daughter were among 9 people killed in a California helicopter crash. Fans in the Philippines honoring the Bryants with this incredible mural. Others were painted in Los Angeles near the Lakers' home arena. The team is playing tonight in Philadelphia, Bryant's hometown.
I'm not finding information on specifically what day it would be, but the last time it was on October 7th. The Schwarzenegger election.
Nearly 10 million people in the U.S. are behind on their rent payments. Analysts at the Urban Institute say on average, renters missed 4 months, owing $5,600. Meantime, the United Nations says roughly 255 million full-time jobs were lost last year. Can you believe that number? That's 4 times greater than during the 2009 global financial crisis. A customer leaves a Colorado bakery a very generous tip of $1,400. Listen.
I couldn't believe it when I saw the bill. I was impressed. I was like, oh my God, this is true. I'm dreaming, or what's going on?
Well, the customer writing on the $20 receipt a smiley face and the words "COVID sucks." He asked the tip to be split among the 7 employees. 2 of those workers and the bakery's owner will join us in the 8 a.m. hour for some uplift.
Yeah, so there probably would be a special election for the recall. Some areas do it just with whatever the general election is. But apparently, according to California rules, it gets their own special election. No idea when that would be, and I don't see any information on that. So somebody will come up with a solution to that at some point here. Oh, one more article here. Okay. Recall. They've raised the supporters of the recall have raised more than $1.7 million for the effort. And I still no information there.
News, guys.
So great. People are
wonderful.
Doing some really
They are.
nice,
People are
kind
good.
things. Yes.
Some people are wonderful. Some people are good. Some people, like you people, are good people. And I appreciate that. And that's the end of the broadcast for this morning anyway, because it's now this afternoon, and I'm going to get some lunch. Maybe we'll be back later today. I don't know. The day is young. We'll see what happens. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Here are some people that are also good people. Hold on. I'm going to tell you why they're good people. I'm going to take my glasses off for the CTA, the call to action. Well, I should keep my headphones on. I do need a haircut, something awful. And specifically, my hair is something awful. If you'd like to support the broadcast, this Facts and Friends broadcast, please go to PayPal, send me some money. Go to Venmo, send me some money. Go to Patreon, and you can become a patron. And you can do that by going to kevinleefather.com, and you can support all of the stuff that we're doing. So more plans, more stuff coming up. My plan right now is to get some lunch. Here are some other good people.
Kevin, thanks for that.